Our focus on the state of South Africa's rail this morning. And now the South African Institution of Civil Engineering is warning that much of public infrastructure has collapsed or is close to collapsing. Now, that's, of course, part of the South African Institution of Civil Engineering's infrastructure report card for the year 2022. It gave South Africa's rail network an E rating, which is the lowest, and it means it is unfit for purpose. The engineering body says that government will need to spend billions of rand in order to fix infrastructure and ensure economic growth. Now, it's President Professor Marianne Vanderschuren, of course, joins us this morning for more on this. And Prof, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. Quite a worrisome statement. Something must be done now or South Africa may become a failed state. That's what your engineering body actually has to say. How do we get to this point of getting an E rating?
Morning and good morning to the viewers as well. The overall rating for infrastructure was a D on a scale between A, world class, and E, failed infrastructure. So that was overall. To summarize, of our 32 subcategories that we have, only one category had an A, 8 had B, 6 had C, 13 had D, and 4 are actually failed. And you're talking about rail, Praza Rail does get an E. It has gone from being the backbone of our public transport to actually not producing anymore, and we know that.
Yeah.
So overall D, and that is the lowest grade that we have given infrastructure since we started the infrastructure report card in 2006. And the reason is underinvestment in maintenance. We are reactive, not proactive. There are not enough maintenance plans, and we see that in our water supply, we see that on our road. I was listening into your previous story, and I'm a transport engineer. You know, it's tragic how many people die on South Africa's roads, and you know, maintenance is one of those.
Prof, I think for context, perhaps let me just give the viewers some context as what we mean when we talk about or when we make reference to these letters of the alphabet. They actually have meaning and status, not just a letter. So the IRC scorecard is based on a 5-point scale where A is world class, B is fit for future, C is satisfactory for now, D is at risk for failure, and E is unfit for purpose. Now, speaking of that same context, Prof, what exactly does the report cover? When we speak of the 2022 IRC report card, what do we speak of? What exactly do we investigate, and what are the findings meant to tell us?
So we look at virtually all civil engineering infrastructure, that is from the provision of water resources, the supply, the sanitation, solid waste, roads, airports, ports and other coastal structures, rail, electricity, hospitals, and I'm talking about the civil engineering healthcare facilities, hospitals and clinics, educational institutions, and we have added 3 categories this time around: pipelines, ICT infrastructure, as well as fire.
Right. But I understand under the same breath, the Gautrain is actually regarded as a world-class infrastructure.
That's correct. The Gautrain was the only A-rated infrastructure in South Africa this time around. And I think any person, South African and people visiting from abroad, will be happy to get into the Gautrain, utilize it, will not be concerned about breaking down, derailing, etc. And I know of places before Praza, for example, collapsed, that the maximum speed on some parts of our rail network, passenger rail network, was 15 kilometers an hour, 15, because of the risk of derailing.
And just speaking of Praza there, Prof, I know and understand that here, I'm just quoting in your statement, that in the past, for every Praza train that was not running, we had about 100 overloaded minibus taxis on the road. It's quite a concerning, statement, especially because there are many South Africans relying relying on trains as a mode of transportation, but there seems to be an underinvestment when it comes to these trains. And you're saying it dates back from 1994.
That's correct. We have been warning about the underinvestment in maintenance on the Prasa rail network, Transnet networks, for passenger rail. We have seen now what has happened. 15 years ago, in the reports, we warned that if investment in maintenance didn't start now, the rail would collapse. And we have seen that happen. We are now warning with regards to other infrastructure that the same could happen. So I really hope that government is listening to us as the South African Institute of Civil Engineering and actually starts to do proactive maintenance on our civil engineering infrastructure and also rethinking how we do things. We have, I live in Cape Town myself, we have gone through the risk of day zero. We now know that other parts of the country are having the same risks. We cannot carry on doing the same thing over and over and expect a different outcome. We need to rethink how we actually do these things.
Yeah, and just my last question to you, Prof. I mean, then what about South Africa's engineering capacity, which I understand has also quite dwindled at a very shocking rate?
Listen, I've been privileged to go around the country and see our 15,000 members working on the ground. I have been amazed by the capacity that they do have. But because of the underinvestment and the small amount of work that is out there, we unfortunately are losing about 20 professional engineers every month. And that is concerning. That's the numbers that we have of our membership that decides to find work elsewhere. In the same vein, we do have an undercapacity in municipalities, for example, and there are sometimes vacancies that are not filled while there are people that are battling to find a job. So we really need to connect things, and the South African Institute of Civil Engineering has created a platform where engineers can put their details down and where anybody that is looking for engineers, professional people in this country can contact us. There's no charge, and can actually get information. Obviously, we do make sure that we are working in accordance to the law and have Poppy in the backs of our minds.
All right, well, I appreciate you speaking to me this morning, Prof. Thank you so much for your time. South African Institution of Civil Engineering President, Professor Marianne Vanderschuren, joining us this morning, talking both about the concern that they have as an engineering body that South Africa will become or may become a failed state if there isn't a more proactive approach to our infrastructure, which some has collapsed, some is on the verge of collapsing, and also saying they could use more engineers, of course, signing up with the body and, of course, being made good use of in the country. All right, with that